Hi, I'm Tracy Reinhold, Chief Security Officer at Everbridge. Everbridge is a software company that specializes in critical event management software. What that means is that we help organizations keep their people safe and their businesses running. So, one of the things that we are the most proud of is that we empower resilience. Together, we empower resilience, which means it's us and our customers. So today, what I want to do is spend a little bit of time talking about resilience, how you establish resilience, how you maintain it, and how you actually recover from a business disruption as efficiently and effectively as possible. So, first of all, let's talk about what a critical event is. And the thing is that it doesn't matter whether it is a terrorism event, whether it's an IT outage, whether it is a weather event, or whether it is another type of anomaly that interrupts your business. So resilience in and of itself is everybody's business. So what you want to do is you want to prepare the organization to be ready for the unexpected. I know that sounds kind of weird, but in order to maintain business operations, you must be able to anticipate the unexpected. Quick example, nobody actually expected a pandemic a couple of years ago. Those organizations that were able to pivot and adjust to the new reality did very well. Those that were not able to pivot could not adjust to the unexpected. Some of them are not with us any longer. So when we talk about resilience, we talk about the ability to maintain business operations in times of difficulty. Now, the easiest thing to recover from are the things that you actually prevent from happening. So, what you want to, when you think about a critical life cycle of a critical event, you want to start with what happens. I apologize in advance. I'm a former FBI agent, so I tend to think of things left of boom and right of boom. So, left of boom is what can you do before the event actually manifests? Part of that is the ingestion of intelligence. So we've all heard the term that data is the new oil. Well, intelligence is the gasoline that is refined from oil that fuels your machine that makes it work. So the idea about intelligence is great. There's only one problem with intelligence. Well, there's actually two. One is old intelligence, and two is too much intelligence. So it's not enough. So what you want to be able to do is to set up your process so that you actually gather intelligence that is relevant to your business. I'll give you an example. If you are considering expanding your business operations into a different part of the world, you are going to want to know specific things about that part of the world before you make a decision as to whether or not you're going to expand your business operations into that area. Maybe it's political, maybe it's socioeconomic, maybe it's weather, maybe it's stability of the workforce. Those are things that are important to you. Now, what's not important are things that don't impact where you are going to go. So the aggregation of intelligence is important, but aggregation without deconfliction just creates massive amounts of information, which almost instantly becomes white noise. So you don't actually pay attention to what's important because you just don't see it. So aggregating intelligence from disparate sources is important because it gives you the ability to authenticate the veracity of the information by multiple source authentication. That's important. You should never rely on single source information because it could be wrong and you could make bad decisions for your company based on that erroneous information. So once you aggregate all of that together, then what you want to think about is, so what matters to me? Maybe you want to geolocate the areas of concern for you and then overlay intelligence that impacts areas that matter to your company. So, and that's different depending on where you are. Maybe if you are in New York City or in London, it may be just a couple of blocks that you're concerned with. But if you are in a more rural, remote area, it may be miles that you're concerned with. So you want to make sure that you have the ability to deconflict in a way that allows you to get access to the most relevant information. Now, if that information, let's just say, for example, you are holding a meeting in Paris and there is a massive farm protest scheduled. Information about that may impact that business meeting, or it may force you to relocate that business. Knowing that before the event is really important. And that's why intelligence aggregation and deconfliction actually allows you to make informed business decisions that allow you to mitigate the impact of an event before it actually manifests. That's really, really important. As I said earlier, it's about the easiest way to respond to is to prevent. Now, I think we need to be realistic in that there's no way we can anticipate every possible business disruption. So while you may be really good at aggregating, deconflicting, and getting intelligence to your business, sometimes things slip through the cracks. It's just the way that life is. So that means you have to be able to respond to an event very quickly. And this is where something like automation really helps. So let's just use the example if it's a weather event that you simply can't mitigate, right? I mean, it's going to happen and it's very fast. It's a flood in Germany, or it's a flood in Italy, or it's a tornado in the central US, or it's a brush fire in Australia. Those things are very fast moving, and you want to make sure that you can respond and protect the people's lives that are impacted in those areas. So one of the ways that you can do that is to automate your response capabilities in your security operations center. So let's just say, for example, it is something that a national weather service indicates a specific rating for a storm. You can configure a system so that you automatically notify people in the impacted area without any human intervention. So in a lot of those cases, and I hate to use a U.S.-centric example, but I'm in the U.S. So tornadic activity in the middle of the United States, seconds matter. Flooding, flash flooding in Europe, seconds matter. So what you want to be able to do is to take the human decision-making process out of that equation by setting up your system so that you can actually automatically notify employees in the impacted area. And you also want to make sure that you have multimodal communication capabilities. So whether it's desktop alerting, whether it's cell phone, whether it's SMS, whether it's text, whether it's an issue like WhatsApp, right? So all of those things are important. By removing that human element, you actually increase your response time exponentially. It really increases your ability to protect your employees at a time where it is critical that they get notified as quickly as possible. Now, you're not going to want to do that with all events, because sometimes you have time when something manifests. And it could be a criminal event. It could be a weather event, excuse me, like a hurricane or a typhoon, where you have days to prepare. Right? You still want to make sure that folks are aware, but that would be an instance where you would not necessarily automate the response, because it is a developing situation and you need to make sure that you provide the right information at the right time so that the employees can make informed decisions about how they are going to ride out this specific event. So we've talked about anticipation and getting ahead of threats. We've talked about responding to threats. The next piece of this is, how do you recover from a threat? And I apologize, I use threats generically, anything that would disrupt your business. Now, the nice thing about the Everbridge, for example, is that our platform is threat and risk agnostic. It doesn't matter whether it's a cyber attack, whether it's a weather event, a terrorism issue, or something else. You still have to recover from that event. And this is where technology has really accelerated our ability to recover from critical events. Now, I'm sure we all remember, well, some of us that are old and bald, remember when we used to have things like call trees, where you would go through a call tree and try to make sure that everybody was notified. It was, at its best, inefficient and ineffective. At its worst, it simply didn't work at all. But technology and the advancements of technology have allowed us to leverage things that accelerate our ability to recover. So let's just say, for example, you have a business operation in an area where there is severe weather. You want to be able to recover from that severe weather two ways. Number one, you want to be able to communicate with your employees. And number two, you want them to be able to communicate back to you in the GSOC or the Security Operations Center. So two-way communication is important. Technology allows us to do that at light speed. The nice thing about this is that it also creates a record of who responded, what their response was, who needs help, who doesn't need help, who decided not to go to work today so it doesn't impact them, etc. All of that can be cataloged on your system in the GSOC that allows you to have instant visibility into the recovery capability of your organization. Now, one of the things that companies struggle with a lot is what happens post-event, right? And the reason that we struggle with that is because we're all human, and humans are incredibly sensitive things, beings, if you will. And so nobody wants to be addressed that they didn't perform well. The nice thing about technology, it allows you to pull a dashboard report that shows you what went well, what didn't go well, and where areas of improvement exist. Now, I want to share with you a way that you can do an after action, post-mortem, whatever you want to call it, in a way that is not punitive to the employees that did not perform well, because what that does is it just creates a cycle where it just continues. Let's say that you had 10 actions during your critical event. 7 of them went really well. 3 did not go well at all. So as opposed to focusing on the 3 that didn't go well, you focus on the 7 that did really, really well, and you take lessons learned from those 7 and apply it to the 3. You do that in a way, it's a very positive way of doing an after action. You're still addressing the things that didn't go well, but you're addressing them in a way that allows those teams to improve as opposed to be punished for not actually doing as well as they could have. Remember, it is a continuous cycle when you do this. Think of a critical event as a circle, if you will, the life cycle of that critical event. So the challenge becomes, what do you learn from that critical event that allows you to accelerate your recovery and return to revenue faster in the next event, as opposed to focusing on what didn't go right and addressing those individuals, as opposed to creating a corrective action plan that allows the organization to accelerate their recovery journey. So that is, in a nutshell, what a critical event is and how you should look at it from a life cycle perspective. The other piece I want to talk about just briefly is the concept of resilience. I've heard this 1,000 times. Resilience is business continuity. That is not right. Business continuity is a part of resilience, but resilience is the ability to recover from a disruption and return to business quickly. Now, the key is you want to make sure that you understand that what that means is you cannot focus myopically on a specific type of event. You want to do a probability and impact study on that, but you also want to expect the unexpected. Something I mentioned earlier about that is, how do you actually do that? You do that by making sure that all parts of the business are engaged in that resilience journey. What you want to do first is you want to ask yourself, where am I on that continuum towards resilience? Am I just barely starting? Do I have business continuity plans? Do I have horizontal integration of my business units? Do I have champions in each one of the business lines that understands the criticality of collaboration and cooperation across the enterprise? The biggest obstacle to resilience are silos. So parts of the business that work independently and do not collaborate with others. The challenge with that is the business as a whole has to continue to function. And in order to do that, to really understand resilience, you have to understand each part of the business and the critical dependencies that that part of the business has and how it interfaces with other parts of the business. By doing that, you have a more comprehensive understanding of what resilience is and what potential disruptions can impact your business. So the biggest enabler of resilience is communication. So there is nothing wrong. So I'll give you a quick example. When I was the CSO at a financial institution in Washington, D.C., I sat down with the lead of our capital markets room. They did $50 billion a day in trades. Shockingly, the FBI didn't teach me how to run a capital markets room. So I went hat in hand to the leader of that part of the company and said, tell me what you do and what's important to you. And her response was, well, why would you care? You're the CSO. And my response is, I don't know how to create a protective plan for this company unless I know what's important. So be a student of the business, understand what's important to the company, work collaboratively across different business lines to establish a resilience posture that is mature enough so that you can recover from a disruption without any hesitation at all. If you do that, you will be successful. So, Rebecca, I think that I've covered what I wanted to cover, and I believe we might have some questions.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for talking to us about resilience and corporate security. It's great to be able to showcase your expertise in this area. So we're just going to go through a couple questions on this topic to elaborate even further, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Perfect. Well, you mentioned that you're obviously a former FBI agent, which is pretty cool. Could you give us a brief idea into your background and how you got to where you are now with Everbridge?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah. So I spent 22 years in the FBI and retired as the deputy head of national security in Washington, D.C. I've had a couple of private sector jobs. I was the first ever chief security officer at a company called Fannie Mae, which is a secondary mortgage company in Washington, D.C. And then while I was at that company, I was a customer of Everbridge. And so I joined the company because we sell into the security space and we didn't understand it. So my role here is not the typical CSO role. I'm also responsible for putting together the security strategy for our company, and since we are in the security space, and I serve on the executive leadership team to put the direction of the company in the right space, to interface with our customers, to be a resource for them, especially other CSOs, and be an evangelist for technology in security.
Well, you're the perfect speaker then to talk on this subject. So just to dive in a little bit into your presentation, obviously you spoke at the beginning about single and multi-source authentication. And I just had a question. If, for example, a business has discovered a potential threat that could be, detrimental to the business, which can happen in a whole multitude of different, options and threats. Is it only, if it's only single source, what would you recommend that they do in this scenario?
Right. So the first thing is to take a beat. Right. So you want to be able to assess the information. Multi-source authentication is really important so that you can make an informed decision. And I'll give you an example. If the threat is coming from social media is very, very fast, but it's also not incredibly accurate. So you're going to want to authenticate that by a secondary source, whether it's an open source communication, whether it's mainstream media, or whether it's law enforcement. You want to make sure that you have the most information possible before you escalate the threat. So, because remember, organizations are looking to the security team to lead with calmness during a time of crisis. We don't want to make quick and uninformed decisions that could adversely impact the business. It undermines the credibility of security and endangers the business.
Well, fantastic example there. And definitely, I think that the words constant vigilance and, calmness, I think, fantastic. And just in terms of obviously, proactive and instant response and visibility is something that you spoke about. Obviously, that's crucial to mitigate damage and tackle a threat in real time. So what type of technology allows you to actually do this? Is it analytics, AI, machine learning?
So there's a couple of things. So if you remember, I talked a little bit about proactive intelligence, getting ahead of threats. So the challenge with that, and I'll use Everbridge as an example, we have 25,000 disparate intel sources that feed our intelligence team. The human mind simply can't process that much information. So utilizing intelligence or AI and machine learning to actually deconflict that intelligence allows you to get access to that intelligence quicker so that you can make informed decisions. That is really about being proactive. That's sort of the left of boom, if you will. So that gives you the ability to assess that information and make an informed decision. That is actually a mitigation strategy before manifestation. That's huge because the more you can do that, the less you have to work on the other side of the issue. So proactive as opposed to just reacting to an event. If you can get intelligence that identifies potential disruptions and put together a mitigation strategy before it happens, then the company wins. And I think that is really how you are proactive. So AI and machine learning, the aggregation of intelligence, also the visualization of intelligence, which is really important. So if you, for example, have an organization where you have a large campus, maybe it's an oil refinery, you need to be able to have eyes on that at all times so that you can start to anticipate potential disruptions to the flow so that you can actually put together a mitigation strategy as early as possible. And proactive is the new way that security has to work because the threats are evolving so quickly and dynamically in today's society that we simply cannot afford to sit and wait.
And could this technology, for example, be integrated with, say, a video surveillance system, for example, to analyze, footage happening in real time to detect whether, I don't know, a mannerism from a thief in a retail store, for example, can it all be integrated and interoperable together?
Absolutely, it can. So obviously, the old standby, the physical security integration management system that aggregates disparate information from an internal perspective, whether it's visitor management, video analytics from your CCTV, doors, those sorts of things are important. But what I love about it is when you think about AI and the ability to do video analytics from surveillance cameras so that you can start to detect patterns that are not normal, which would indicate a potential threat to the business. These are things that humans have done for years. If we use AI correctly and responsibly, we can use that to accelerate our ability to detect a threat before it actually manifests. By pattern analysis and recognition, that actually allows us to do that. The nice thing about a PSIM is it actually allows you to aggregate all kinds of internal threat information into a single operating picture for your GSOC, console operator. So if you use AI to enhance your video analytics, compound that with your complete visibility of your infrastructure, think about how much faster you will be able to identify potential disruptions and then put together mitigation strategies as quickly as possible. So it's huge differences.
Definitely, and I think that's actually been the theme of this conference so far is responsible AI, is innovating and using AI within the responsible guardrails of innovation. And that's something that's really kind of stood out. The kind of the possibilities so far have been endless. It's just making sure that we're using it in the correct way. And obviously, as you say, determining every threat is pretty much virtually impossible. And trying to use technology to accurately, predict, analyze, and prevent every type of threat that can be, it can be extremely expensive. So what would you advise a business does in that, in terms of priorities in that instance?
So every business has key capabilities. Those are the things that the business has to be able to do to survive. So when you build your protective strategy or your resilience strategy or your security strategy, focus on the key elements that are critical to the business. And not everything is equal. So, it used to be these were talked about as business continuity plans. It's actually more than that. It's about identifying key capabilities and putting together a protective strategy that allows those to continue to operate or to recover quickly from disruptions. So when you look at the type of intelligence that you want to be able to focus on what's important to the company. It's not everything. It's specific things that have to happen every day to maintain business and maintain revenue. So when you do that, you break them down into maybe there are 5 things that the business has to do every day, and you build your strategy around that so that those 5 critical capabilities are protected first. That's how you prioritize and rank the way that you look at protecting the business. What's important to the business has to be the way that you develop your protective strategy.
Well, wise words. And just lastly, obviously, since the pandemic, we've had a complete overhaul of the way that we work. For example, with hybrid working, we've spoken a little bit about AI, so we've had that kind of technological revolution happening with AI, cloud, so on and so forth. How do you think the threat landscape has evolved over recent years, in your opinion, when it comes to resilience?
So, one of the biggest challenges we have in the post pandemic world is the insider threat issue. So, historically, insider threat has been addressed because people would come into the office at 2 o'clock in the morning and access computer at an odd time. Those rules no longer apply because people aren't just working from home, they're working from anywhere, which means they could be in a totally different time zone. So the social clues that we would see and observe and work, we don't see anymore. The timeliness of logging onto your computer is no longer as predictive as it used to be. So insider threat is a huge issue. The other thing, we talked about the good side of AI. There's also a bad side to AI, right? So one of the bad things is the deep fake issues that are resonating. We just had the other day a deep fake that was perpetrated by students against other students, and it was very difficult to tell the difference. So be aware that the idea that you're going to wait to learn the new technology is actually putting your organization at risk. You have to embrace technology, and you have to do it in a way that allows you to keep current against the threats. The last thing I will say about that is that we have a whole new generation of security professionals that have grown up with technology. They're very comfortable with it. They've had it since they were children, and they understand it and they can leverage it. Take advantage of both sides of the equation, the experience side from maybe older security professionals, but also take advantage of what our new security professionals bring to the field, because that diversity of experience and thought is what's going to make us more capable in protecting our organizations. So it is definitely a collaborative approach, but the world has changed. Hybrid has changed everything. AI is changing everything. And if you use generative AI, every company has a co-pilot program, which is hilarious. So what we're seeing is the development of technology is accelerating at such a pace that security has to maintain vigilance in order to maintain relevance for the company. Remember, our job is to enable the business. We can't do that if we are complacent.
No, definitely. I think it's a very interesting point that you brought up around people working from anywhere and different time zones. I mean, absolutely, that is a huge aspect that people don't even think about. And also, it's not just the unpredicted time zone difference and hour difference, because people are a lot happier to work, later from home because they don't have the commute. Or, for example, businesses are structuring their goods and their supply chain, with dark deliveries. So we're actively inviting people into our business post, closing hours, and just hoping that, they're not going to kind of let some other people in at the same time, and hoping they can rely on their security solutions to put them at ease. So it's definitely an interesting world that we live in at the moment, a progressive world, and a very interesting in terms of innovation. But like you said, if we can innovate, so can the bad actors. So making sure that we can stay ahead of that is something that's incredibly important. But thank you, Tracy. I really want to say that you did a fantastically insightful session, and it's been great to catch up a little bit as well. I'm sure you offer our audience, a whole lot of value. So thank you. And if anybody has any further questions or would like to find out more about building their business resilience, they can reach out to Tracy directly at Everbridge or through the platform. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Rebecca.